the money supply, that simply means that prices will go up because now there is more money. It just increased the money supply. That simply means that prices will go up because now there is more money in the system that is chasing the same amount of goods and services. So that makes the price of these things go up. That's just logic, right? So that's what happens when you suddenly increase the currency and there are more dollars or more euros. It makes prices go up, right? And you can increase the amount of currency in a system without price inflation if the production of goods and services increases even more than the increase in the currency. So a good example of this was in the late 1800s in the US, when there was actually an increase in the overall currency, the amount of currency units in the system. However, prices actually went down. How did that happen? Well, it's because there was so much production of goods and services, and that production was even greater than the increase in the money supply. So even though the money supply expanded, prices actually went down because more things were produced. So you can see that there are a lot of factors at play in terms of the causes of inflation and how inflation happens. Let's talk about the effects of inflation now. So when there's inflation, when there's a lot of inflation especially, people are not encouraged to save. People are actually encouraged to spend and invest. For example, let's pretend you have $10 and the rate of inflation is very high right now. And you put your $10 in a bank account, a savings account, and it has a low interest rate, and that $10 increases a little bit, but the rate of inflation is 10% maybe, and then maybe next year your $10 has grown to $10.05 in that savings account, but the purchasing power has gone down for those $10. Now, instead of needing $10 to buy a hamburger, it takes $11. So even though you saved $10 and you earned a little bit of interest, the rate of inflation went up higher and you actually lost purchasing power. You see how that works? So people are not as encouraged to save because usually the rate of inflation kills their savings. It makes their savings less valuable. So instead of that, people are encouraged to spend money now because prices increase in the future if there is inflation. And so people want to buy things now before prices increase. And people want to invest their money in something that will provide them a return that's greater than the rate of inflation. So if inflation is 10%, you want to earn at least 11% with your investments so that you can beat the rate of inflation and your purchasing power won't go down, right? So in the opposite scenario, if there is deflation, this has the opposite effect. It encourages people to save money because their money will actually be worth more next year, then it's worth now. So you put your $10 in a savings account, and maybe that grows to $10.05 next year, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just $10 still. However, that $10 buys more next year because prices have gone down, and you've received an increase in your purchasing power. So that's what happens when there's deflation, and in many cases, deflation might result in less investment because people don't need to chase the best forms of investment to beat the rate of inflation, because there is no inflation. There is deflation. So people don't need to search for those investments. They can just keep their money in a bank account, and it grows in real value over time because prices are going down. So you see how inflation and deflation encourage the opposite behavior, right? And when it comes to wages, the word wages just refers to the amount of money that you make, specifically the amount of money you make per hour. So when it comes to wages and your income, this never keeps up with inflation if there's high inflation. So if there's 10% inflation, your wages are probably not going to go up by the same amount at the same time, right? So you might receive raises over time. Your boss might raise your salary. However, your overall purchasing power is not increasing because prices are increasing faster than your wages. So even though you might make more money in 1 year, your real wage is actually less. When I say your real wage, I'm referring to your real wage adjusted for inflation, right? So even though your income might increase, life continues to get harder and harder to afford. The verb afford is used to say that you can pay for something. So if I say I can't afford that car, I'm saying I don't have enough money to buy that car. So life gets harder and harder to afford because your income doesn't increase as fast as inflation increases. And another reason why life gets harder to afford is because interest rates often rise when we have high inflation. And so, for example, it might be a lot more expensive to get a loan from the bank or to pay back money that you borrowed. So things get harder to afford overall. And so, of course, there are many negative effects of inflation. This is something that hurts people very badly in many cases. So what are some countries that have high inflation right now in 2023? So I'll mention a few of them here, but there are many other countries that also have pretty high inflation currently. But here are a few of them. Venezuela has around 400% inflation. That's really high. So imagine prices today being 400% what they were last year. Right? That's not a good situation, of course. In the country of Lebanon, recently there was over 250% inflation. Really high. In Argentina, inflation has been a big problem in recent and the rate of inflation has reached to over 100%. And inflation is also a big issue in Turkey right now. It's close to 50% at the time of recording this. So there are some countries right now that are dealing with major problems because of really high inflation, and maybe you live in one of these countries and you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not a good situation to be in.